Vanessa Carter didn't expect to be stood up for the third time in 2 months. But there she was alone at a white linen table for two, swirling her untouched wine at one of Manhattan's most exclusive rooftop restaurants. She glanced at the city lights glittering below, her jaw tight, trying to keep her composure. The waiter had already come by twice, asking if her date would be arriving soon. She'd nodded the first time, mumbled, just parking the second. Now she didn't have the energy to pretend. "Excuse me," a deep voice said beside her. "I don't mean to interrupt, but you look like you could use some company." She looked up and her breath caught. Standing there was a man tall, broad-shouldered, with messy dark hair and a tailored jacket that fit like it was made just for him. His eyes were sharp, piercing blue, but there was a softness in the way he smiled down at her. "I'm Owen Zeller," he said. "They just told me the kitchen's closing in 15 minutes and I missed my reservation. But I couldn't walk past this table without noticing you sitting here looking like someone just canceled on the best date of their life." Vanessa blinked. "They did." A beat passed. Then she added, "I'm not really in the mood for dinner, I know," he said, slipping his hands into his pockets casually. "But what if I promise to keep my elbows off the table and not ask about your job or your favorite color?" She couldn't help it, she laughed. It slipped out of her before she could stop it. "That's a weird pitch," she said, tilting her head. "I'm told I'm charming in person," he replied, grinning, "and I'm starving. If I sit quietly and stare at the skyline and not at you, does that buy me 15 minutes of your table?" She studied him. There was something about him confident, yes, but not arrogant. His voice was calm, like he wasn't trying too hard. And she didn't exactly want to go home and cry into leftover pad thai. "Fine," she said, motioning to the empty chair, "but I'm not sharing dessert." Owen sat down, thanking her with a nod, and flagged down the waiter like he owned the place. He ordered without looking at the menu. The filet medium rare, truffle mashed potatoes, and a bottle of the 19 Brunello if you still have it. Vanessa's eyebrows lifted. "Fancy?" "I don't believe in bad wine," he said, then looked at her. "What about you?" "I had the scallops, they were." "Fine." "No one eats scallops when they're happy," he said. She laughed again, this time shaking her head. "You're making that up." "Maybe," he replied, "but I'm right." They talked. Nothing deep, just easy back and forth. He was quick-witted, asked questions, but never pried. When her phone buzzed on the table, she flipped it over fast. "Was that him?" Owen asked gently. "Yeah," she muttered, "apologizing for some work emergency." "Right," he said, not pressing. When the wine came, he poured for her first. The waiter set down 2 glasses and their plates, and for a while they ate in comfortable silence. "So what do you do when you're not making men regret their life choices?" he asked after a while. She hesitated. "I'm a designer. Interiors. I just opened my own consulting business 3 months ago." "That's bold," he said. "Brave," she smiled. "Or stupid, depending on who you ask." "I'd say bold," he replied, holding her gaze. She looked down, suddenly aware of the way her heart was beating faster. She hadn't felt like this in a long time, like someone was actually seeing her. "Okay, your turn," she said. "What do you do?" He paused just a second too long. "I work in finance," he said, casual. "Boring stuff, mostly mergers, equity, that sort of thing." She narrowed her eyes playfully. "That sounds made up." "It is," he said, grinning, "but only because it's boring." When dinner ended, he stood with her and walked her to the elevator. The city around them sparkled like something out of a dream. "This was unexpected," she said. "Best kind of night," he replied. She hesitated. "Thank you for saving me from a really depressing solo dinner." He leaned in slightly. "Vanessa, can I see you again?" There was something in his voice, gentle but serious. Her chest tightened. "I don't usually say yes to strangers who crash my table." "Then let me fix that," he said, offering his hand. "Let's not be strangers." She slid her hand into his. It was warm, steady. "Okay," she said. "Not strangers," he smiled, and the elevator doors closed between them. Vanessa didn't know it then, but the man who'd asked to join her table wasn't just charming, he was one of the wealthiest self-made millionaires on the East Coast. and he was about to fall completely, helplessly in love with her. Vanessa stepped into her studio the next morning, arms full of fabric swatches and a lukewarm coffee she hadn't had time to sip. Her assistant, Maya, was already hunched over the drafting table with her usual tight bun unraveling at the edges. "You're late," Maya called without looking up. "The Montrose couple moved their consult to this morning. They'll be here in 20. Vanessa dropped everything onto the desk. "Of course they did." She peeled off her jacket, grabbing her notes from yesterday's site visit. Her mind should have been on the color palette for the Montrose's Upper East Side apartment, but it wasn't. Instead, it kept drifting back to the man from last night. Owen. How his voice had a calm steadiness that made her feel seen without having to explain herself. How he'd managed to turn a humiliating night into something oddly lovely. She hadn't even asked for his last name. "Do you know an Owen Zeller?" she asked suddenly. Maya looked up, blinking. "Like, as in Zeller Capital," Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "I don't know." "He said he worked in finance." Maya let out a short laugh. "If it's the same guy, he doesn't just work in finance, Nessa. He basically owns half of Midtown." Vanessa blinked. "That can't be right." "I saw an article about him last week. Some insane acquisition deal. He's supposed to be super private. Like no interviews, no red carpets, nothing. People call him the ghost millionaire or something ridiculous like that." Vanessa's stomach fluttered in a way she didn't like. "That's probably not him. He asked to share my table at dinner. He didn't even have a reservation." "Maybe he likes to slum it with the rest of us," Maya said, grinning. "Or maybe he just wanted an excuse to talk to you." The doorbell chimed before Vanessa could respond. She straightened as the Montroses entered Mrs. Montrose in oversized sunglasses and heels sharp enough to pierce concrete, her husband already distracted by his phone. For the next hour, Vanessa stayed sharp. She walked them through mood boards, reviewed layout sketches, and talked them out of a marble waterfall island that would have eaten half their kitchen. They left 10 minutes late and thousands of dollars lighter, promising to wire over the deposit by end of day. As soon as the door closed, Vanessa pulled her phone from her bag and stared at it. Nothing, no missed calls, no emails, no Owen. She hadn't given him her number. She'd walked away last night feeling like she'd see him again, like it had been more than a fluke. But now, in the light of day, it felt absurd. Maybe he hadn't meant any of it. Maybe it was just a charming man filling time. The thought stayed with her all afternoon, even as she reviewed vendor bids and toured a pre-war loft in Tribeca. By 6, she still couldn't shake it. When Maya left for the evening, Vanessa lingered at her desk, the studio quiet around her. She turned off the desk lamp, grabbed her coat, and headed out, deciding a long walk and a slice of mushroom pizza from the corner place might make her feel better. She'd barely reached the sidewalk before a sleek black Jaguar rolled to a stop at the curb, the window lowered. "Vanessa." Her heart stopped. Owen leaned toward the open window, one hand on the steering wheel, the other resting casually on the door. He was dressed differently today, no suit, just a navy sweater and dark jeans, but he looked no less polished. "Hi," she said, stunned. "I didn't want to leave it to chance," he said. "I called the restaurant. They wouldn't give me your number, but they said you were a regular." "I asked around." She stepped closer. "You tracked me down." "I didn't get to ask if you liked the wine," he said, eyes warming. "And I regretted that all day." She crossed her arms. "You could have just asked me out." "I wanted to," he said. "But I didn't want to assume." A pause passed between them. She could hear the hum of the city behind them, the clatter of a delivery bike passing. "You want a ride?" he asked. "We don't have to go anywhere fancy, just somewhere." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay." He got out, opened the door for her himself. The leather interior smelled faintly of cedar. When he slid into the driver's seat, she turned toward him. "Be honest," she said. "Are you secretly famous?" He glanced at her, amused. "No, but you're not just some guy who missed his reservation either." He didn't answer right away. Then, without taking his eyes off the road, he said, "I run a firm, investments mostly. I started it a few years ago. That's vague. I'm a vague kind of guy." She gave him a look. Are you afraid I'll Google you? Would it change things if you did? She didn't answer. He pulled into a parking spot in front of a quiet restaurant tucked into a tree-lined street in the West Village. There was no line, no flashing sign, just heavy wood doors and warm light glowing from inside. He came around and opened her door again. Inside, the hostess greeted them by name. "I like quiet places," he said, leading her to a candlelit table in the back. Vanessa sat, her heart thudding. He didn't try to impress her with stories or flash. Instead, he asked about her first apartment, whether she preferred the beach or the mountains, what she would do if she had 1 week and no responsibilities. She answered, and somewhere between the wine and the risotto, her shoulders relaxed. When the check came, he didn't glance at it, just handed over a black card and returned to the conversation without missing a beat. Back outside, the air had turned cooler. She wrapped her coat tighter around her. "You still haven't told me your last name," she said as they walked. "Does it matter?" he asked. "I'd like to know," she replied. He stopped, then turned to face her. "Zeller," he said finally. "Owen Zeller." Her breath caught. She didn't say anything right away, just stared at him, everything Maya had said that morning flashing through her mind. "You lied." "I left it out," he said. "Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted one night where it wasn't about that." She looked away, then back at him. "Are you always this good at making things complicated?" He studied her. "Only when it matters." She didn't answer, not yet. But she didn't walk away either. Vanessa stood on the edge of the rooftop garden, staring out at the skyline while the wind lifted her curls gently off her shoulders. The party behind her, some kind of exclusive fundraiser with string lights, curated jazz, and guests in designer suits buzzed with low conversation and champagne flutes. She didn't belong here and she knew it, but she had said yes. Owen had invited her 2 nights ago, and although he hadn't told her much about the event itself, his tone had left no room for doubt. "Come with me," he'd said, his hand brushing hers. "I want you to see my world," so she had stepped into it. And now she was wearing borrowed heels, a silk dress she'd pulled from the back of her closet, and an uneasy expression she hadn't quite managed to shake since walking through the marble foyer downstairs. "Is it too much?" Owen asked from behind her, his voice quiet. She turned. He stood there with the top buttons of his shirt undone beneath a tailored black jacket, his posture relaxed, but his eyes searching hers. "I've never been to anything like this," she admitted. "You don't have to impress anyone," he said. "Least of all me." She looked back toward the party. "They all know who you are." "They don't know me," he said simply. "They know what I've built." "Do you like it?" she asked. "All of this?" There was a pause before he replied. "Sometimes, but not tonight." "Not until you walked in." Before she could answer, a woman approached them, tall and lethal in a tailored navy pantsuit and glossy red lipstick. "Owen," she said, kissing his cheek, "you've been avoiding me." "Not intentionally," he said, already glancing at Vanessa. "This is Vanessa Carter." The woman extended a hand. "Evelyn Roth, we've worked together for years." Vanessa shook her hand, her smile polite but brief. Evelyn turned to Owen. "We need to finalize the Zurich pitch. You can't keep stalling." "We'll talk next week," he said, not budging. Evelyn's eyes flicked back to Vanessa, assessing. "Of course, enjoy your evening." As she walked away, Vanessa looked at him. "She doesn't like me." "She doesn't like anyone," he said. "That's just Evelyn." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "Is she your ex?" "No," he said. "But she wanted to be." Vanessa laughed once, but the sound was short. "This is a lot." "I know," he said. "And you're handling it better than anyone I've ever brought to one of these." She froze. "So this is a pattern," he took a breath. "No one's made it past the second night." "You're different." Her stomach twisted, and not in the good way. "You say that like it's supposed to reassure me." "I'm not trying to reassure you," he said, stepping closer. "I'm trying to be honest." She looked up at him. "Then tell me something real, not polished. Not curated." He hesitated, then said, "My mom was a schoolteacher. She worked 2 jobs after my dad disappeared. I got into Wharton on a scholarship, and I used to sleep in the library because I couldn't afford a dorm room." Vanessa blinked. "Why are you telling me that now?" Because this, he gestured around them, isn't who I am, it's what I earned. But everything that matters to me comes from before any of this. She was quiet for a moment, then you could have led with that. Would you have believed me? She didn't answer. He reached for her hand. Come with me. She let him lead her away from the rooftop, down a narrow hallway and through a side door that opened into a greenhouse filled with hanging plants and fairy lights. It was quieter here, warmer, more human. I bought this building last year, he said. They wanted to tear this part down, I made them restore it. She looked around. It's beautiful. I wanted to show you something that still feels like mine. She turned toward him. I'm not sure I fit in your world. Then I'll make one where you do, she exhaled slowly. You say that like it's possible. I say that because I want you in it, he said. Not just tonight, not just for dinners and parties. I want the real parts, the hard parts. She stepped closer, her voice low. You don't know what my hard parts look like. Then show me, he said. I'm not afraid of them. Her breath caught just for a second. Then she reached up and touched his jaw, her hand lingering there. I don't trust easily, she said. I'm not asking you to, he replied. I'm asking you to try. She looked at him for a long, quiet beat, then she kissed him. It wasn't dramatic or rushed. It was slow, certain, like sealing a promise neither of them had spoken yet. When they pulled apart, she rested her forehead against his. I never do this, she murmured. Neither do I, he said, and for once she believed him. Vanessa's heels tapped softly against the polished stone of the museum floor as she wandered through the private after-hours exhibit, her fingers trailing the edge of a velvet rope. The Met had never been this quiet. Owen had arranged the entire evening a private tour and dinner in the Temple of Dendur for no reason other than he said she deserved to be surrounded by beauty that matched her own. A string quartet played faintly in the distance. Every corner of the museum was bathed in golden light, but it was the way Owen looked at her like she was the only piece of art worth seeing that made her chest ache. He appeared beside her, 2 glasses of wine in hand, offering one without a word. I didn't think it could get more surreal than that rooftop, she said. He took a sip. You said you liked quiet places. I wanted to give you one. She studied him, eyes narrowing slightly. Why me? He looked out across the vast hall toward the ancient columns beyond the glass. Because you make me forget I've built my life around walls. Because when I talk to you, I don't feel like I have to keep proving anything. Vanessa's brows drew together. You don't have to prove anything, Owen, not to me. He turned to her, expression unreadable for a moment. Then he said, My father left when I was 9. He emptied our account, pawned my mother's wedding ring, and never looked back. Every deal I made after that wasn't about money, it was about control, making sure I never needed anyone again. She went still. I wasn't planning on this, he continued. You, us, I thought I'd built my life exactly the way I wanted it, but then I sat down at that table and everything I thought I needed shifted. The silence between them stretched, not uncomfortable but full. I don't want to be another thing you're trying to control, she said gently. You're not, he said. You're the one thing I can't. Vanessa's eyes searched his. What happens when the shine wears off? It won't, he said, stepping closer, because I don't want the curated version of you. I want the version who gets paint on her hands and fights for her ideas and gets frustrated when things don't go right. I want the days when you're tired and stubborn and completely, unapologetically yourself. Her throat tightened. You're not afraid of messy. I'm afraid of never getting close enough to see it. She set her glass down, stepping into the space between them. I don't fall easily. I'm not asking you to fall, he said. Just stay. She leaned in, forehead brushing his. You're impossible. But here, he whispered, always here. The museum lights dimmed slightly as a server approached, clearing his throat softly. Dinner is ready, sir. Vanessa pulled back, blinking. You mean there's more? He offered his arm. I made a reservation. They entered the Temple of Dendur, now transformed into a candle-lit oasis. A long table sat in the center, dressed in deep navy linens and scattered with white peonies. A soft glow from floating lanterns shimmered on the reflecting pool. She looked around slowly. You did all this? I wanted to set the bar high, he said. So you'd never accept anything less than magic. Dinner was quiet and intimate. They spoke in low voices, fingers brushing, eyes lingering. When the final course was cleared, Owen stood and walked around to her side. Vanessa tensed. "What are you doing?" He knelt, not with a ring, with a key. "I bought a brownstone in Brooklyn Heights," he said. 3 floors, a garden, and a ridiculous amount of natural light. I want to build a life there, not just mine, ours." Her eyes widened. "I'm not asking you to move in tomorrow," he said. "I'm asking you to dream with me, start something real. I want to support your business, your vision, your everything. I want to wake up next to you and argue about breakfast and help pick tile for your next project." She stared at him, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and joy. "I'm giving you the key," he said. "Not to the house, to my life. And I'll wait as long as you need before you use it." Vanessa dropped to her knees in front of him, heart pounding. "I don't need time," she said. "I just needed to know you meant all of this." "I do," he said, voice rough. "Every word." She took the key, curled it into her palm, and kissed him. It was fierce this time, full of everything they hadn't said fast enough. A promise. A decision. When they broke apart, she whispered, "I reserved a table that night to forget someone who didn't show up. You found someone who never wants to leave," he said. And for the first time in years, she believed it. Later that month, her firm signed a contract to design 3 floors of Owen's new headquarters. Her name went up in bold silver across a Fifth Avenue awning. And on Sundays, they walked through the garden of the brownstone, coffee in hand, arguing playfully about which chairs matched the patio tiles. She'd reserved a table for one, but love had reserved a future for 2. Vanessa stood barefoot in the center of the brownstone sunroom, her fingertips dusted with dried plaster, eyes fixed on the newly installed ceiling medallion. The room smelled of fresh paint and lavender oil, her signature touch, and the morning light spilled across the mosaic tile she'd personally designed. It was the last room in the house to be finished, the final piece. Owen leaned against the doorway, his jacket slung over one shoulder and a paper bag in one hand. His tie was loosened, and the top of his shirt was open, something that still made her heart stumble just a little. "You're staring like it's a Monet," he said. "It's better," she replied without looking at him. "This one was mine." He stepped in, placing the bag on the table beside her. "You forgot breakfast." She turned, smiling faintly. "You just wanted an excuse to bring croissants from that place in Soho." "I'm not above bribes," he said. "Especially when I want you to stop working long enough to remember we're supposed to enjoy this house, not just renovate it." "I'll sit if you do," she said, brushing her hands on her jeans. He pulled out 2 flaky pastries and 2 lattes, already knowing her order. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, sipping in silence for a moment as birds chirped faintly from the garden just beyond the glass doors. "I got a call from the board this morning," he said eventually. "They approved our expansion into Lisbon." Vanessa glanced over. "Congratulations. I want to take you with me, not for business, for us, a week, just you and me, nothing planned." She hesitated. "I have 3 projects lined up, and the gallery install for the Kleins is coming up fast." He reached over and touched her knee. "You built this business to live your life, not avoid it." She looked down. "I know. You've taken care of everything and everyone since the day I met you," he said. "Let me take care of you for once." She swallowed, caught off guard by the softness in his voice. "You already do. Then let me make it bigger." She looked at him for a long beat. "What's in Lisbon?" "Sunsets," he said. "And a rooftop I've already reserved for one night. I want to ask you something there." Her heart skipped. "Why not ask it here?" "Because you deserve magic," he said. "And a place that's never carried anyone else's memories." The room fell quiet again, but her pulse was loud in her ears. She didn't speak until she'd finished the last bite of her croissant. "Okay, let's go," he exhaled, something in his shoulders relaxing. "We leave Friday." That night they lay in bed with the windows open, the scent of honeysuckle drifting in from the trellis outside. Vanessa rested her head on his chest, tracing slow circles on his skin. You ever miss the version of your life before this? She asked quietly. No, he said without hesitation. I was building walls, now I'm building something that lasts. She pressed a kiss to his chest. I never thought I'd find this. You didn't find it, he said. You made it. Lisbon welcomed them with warm breezes and cobblestone streets, the kind of old-world charm that wrapped around her senses and made her forget time. They stayed in a villa tucked into the hillside, where the mornings smelled of orange blossoms and the nights echoed with distant music and laughter. On the fifth evening, Owen led her up a spiral staircase to a rooftop overlooking the ocean. Lanterns swayed in the breeze, and a small table had been set with 2 glasses of wine and a single candle glowing low. She turned in a slow circle, taking it in. This is where I ask, he said, stepping to her with something small in his hand. She barely breathed as he opened the box. But it wasn't a ring, it was a pendant, delicate, gold, shaped like a key. The house was the beginning, he said. But this is the piece you wear. The reminder that no matter where we go, the life we built is always yours to come home to. When you're ready for more, I'll be waiting with the next question. She took it in her hands, eyes glistening. I thought you were going to propose. I will, he said, but I want you to say yes because it's what you want. Not because it's what comes next. She reached up and fastened the chain around her neck. Ask me anyway, she whispered. He looked at her, stunned. You're sure? I've never been more. He took a slow breath, then pulled something else from his pocket, a second box. A ring this time, one she'd never seen before. No diamonds, just a deep sapphire set in brushed gold reflecting the ocean behind her. Vanessa Carter, will you marry me? She didn't wait. Yes, she said, and kissed him before he could even slide the ring on her finger. They stayed on the rooftop long after the last light faded, wrapped in each other, dreaming aloud. Months later, their wedding took place in the garden of the brownstone. Only 30 people were invited, friends who'd stayed, family they'd chosen. Meyer officiated, crying so hard she could barely pronounce, by the power vested in me. Vanessa wore a soft ivory dress with a low back and bare feet. Owen wore a navy suit with no tie and his heart on full display. As they danced under the strings of white lights, she whispered into his ear, "Tell me one thing you never told anyone else." He leaned in close. "I don't believe in fate, but I believe in the table you sat at." And the moment I knew I'd never leave it again. They spent their honeymoon in Florence, where she sketched tile patterns from cathedral floors while he read books in sunlit courtyards and brought her espresso without being asked. Years passed, but the rituals remained. Sunday mornings in the garden. Quiet dinners lit by nothing but candles and the soft hum of jazz. Keys hung by the door, a pendant around her neck and a ring on her finger. They didn't talk about forever, they lived it.